Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB game scheduled for Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Wednesday in Major League Baseball. First up, it's the Atlanta Braves taking on the Detroit Tigers. A.J. Smith-Shawver and Michael Lorenzen are your starters. You know, we don't really have a large sample size for A.J. Smith-Shawver. Obviously, at the Major League level, only 7 2/3 innings, but even in the minor leagues this season, we saw him pitch kind of all over the place. He pitched at A-plus ball, AA ball, and AAA ball, and combined in only 33 innings. He had a solid 1.09 ERA, but we saw last year he only pitched an A ball in Augusta. He struggled with a 5.11 ERA. His strikeout numbers have always been there throughout his young career, but the walks are there. At times he does give up a good amount of base runners. I do worry about him in this spot a little bit. Like I said, very small sample size. We saw in his last game only 2 strikeouts and 5 1/3 innings of work. So if he's a strikeout-dependent guy and he's not earning those strikeouts, I do expect him to struggle. Michael Lorenzen's been solid for the Tigers this season. He has struggled against some of the tougher lineups in baseball, so we could see the Braves get to him for a few runs. But Lorenzen still overall this year, good numbers at home, a 3.86 ERA, good numbers overall this season. I think he does enough to keep the Tigers in this game. I'm going to take the 1.5 runs here with Detroit. Next up, it's the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Minnesota Twins. We're going to see Bailey Ober and Colin Ray as your projected starters, but there is no official lineup for this game, so we could see a pitching change. Bailey Ober, I thought, was a little bit unlucky in his last start against the Tampa Bay Rays. His final line was 5 1/3 innings, 3 runs, 1 home run, and 7 strikeouts. And obviously a mistake pitch giving up the home run, but he had 7 strikeouts against a very tough Tampa Bay Rays lineup. I thought he pitched good enough for the Twins to, back him up and get a win for him, but he did take the loss in that game. It was a 4-2 final score. I think Ober pitches well in this spot. He's pitched well overall this year, 2.61 ERA. I do think he's a much better option compared to Colin Ray on the other side for Milwaukee with a 4.47 ERA this season. Now, last start was a solid one for Ray. He went 5 innings of shutout baseball, 8 strikeouts against the Baltimore Orioles. Could be his best start of the season. But before that, we saw him struggle against the Giants and the Reds in 11 innings of work, 7 earned runs, 3 home runs. So he's been very inconsistent to start the year. Not really somebody that I would depend on to miss a lot of bats and earn a lot of strikeouts. His control can be off at times as well. I do think Minnesota takes this game behind Ober. So give me the Minnesota Twins here on the money line. Next up, we see the San Francisco Giants take it on the St. Louis Cardinals. Anthony DeSclafani and Jordan Montgomery are your projected starters. Jordan Montgomery is in better form right now. His last 3 starts, 2 earned runs or fewer in all 3. He had really struggled in the month of May. The Cardinals were losing a lot of his games, and in the month of May, a 6.04 ERA overall. But so far in June, 11 2/3 innings, 1 run. He's got 11 strikeouts, a .77 ERA. One of those starts was a quality start, 6 innings of shutout baseball against the Reds. A very tough lineup to face this year if you're a left-handed starting pitcher. They've been pretty profitable against lefties this season, so it's good to see Jordan Montgomery start to get in better form. You're facing a Giants team here that doesn't have the best numbers overall this season against those left-handed pitchers. In the last 30 days, Giants are around league average in team OPS, a little bit below league average, 22nd in baseball in isolated power, with a pretty steep strikeout rate of 23.5%. I do think Montgomery pitches well, good enough here for the Cardinals to grab the win. Anthony DeSclafani's been better on the road this season, believe it or not, than he's been at Oracle Park, a very pitcher-friendly ballpark. But the Cardinals have done a really good job against right-handed pitchers in the last 30 days. In the month of May in general, they were hitting righties very well. In the last 30 days, 4th in baseball in team OPS and 2nd in isolated power against those right-handed pitchers with a low strikeout rate and a pretty high walk rate. I'm going to take the St. Louis Cardinals here on the money line. Next up, it's the Subway Series Game 2 between the New York Yankees and the New York Mets, 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. Great pitching matchup, at least on paper. Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander in this one. Now, bear with me a little bit. My voice is going out. You do these videos every day. Sometimes your voice doesn't really hold up altogether, so we're going to get through the video nonetheless. And in this matchup, I do think the Yankees take it. Justin Verlander just has not been the same pitcher this season. He's got his last 5 games. The Mets are 1-4 on the money line in those games. His last start against the Braves, 3 innings of work, 4 earned runs, 1 unearned run, a home run in that game, 4 walks to go with it. That was a 13-10 final score in favor of Atlanta. And the New York Yankees, Garrett Cole is their best option, obviously, on the mound. He's their ace. He's pitched like an ace this season, 7-1 with a 2.84 ERA. He's got good numbers at Yankee Stadium. He's got good numbers on the road. His last start against the Red Sox, it wasn't good enough for the Yankees to win it, but it was a quality start. 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts. we saw Cole struggle, in starts against the Orioles and the Padres, giving up some home runs and 5 earned runs in those games each. But he bounced back against the Dodgers. He looked strong against the Red Sox. I think he's good enough here against the Mets team. It's been very inconsistent offensively. Give me the New York Yankees here on the money line. Next up, it's the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Jose Barrios and Kyle Bradish are your starters. Last year and the beginning of this season, we've talked about how Jose Barrios is not the most trustworthy on the road, but I don't know if you can say that anymore when you look at his last 4 road starts against the Pirates, the Rays, the Twins, and the Mets. Some decent teams in that mix against right-handed pitchers. Barrios went 6 1/3 innings of 2-run ball against the Pirates on the road, and 8-2 Blue Jays win against the Rays back on May 23rd. 7 innings of 1-run baseball in a 20-1 Blue Jays win against the Minnesota Twins on May 28th. His former team 5 2/3 innings of shutout baseball with 5 strikeouts in a 3-0 Blue Jays win. And then on June 3rd, not too long ago, against the New York Mets, 6 innings, quality start, 1-run baseball with 6 strikeouts in a 2-1 Blue Jays win. The Blue Jays have won each of his last 4 road starts. He's pitched well in all of those games. I think he pitches well here. Another tough matchup against the Baltimore Orioles, but I do think his bats are going to back him up against the right-handed pitcher in Kyle Bradish. Bradish had 10 strikeouts in his last game against the Brewers, but still 6 base hits and 3 runs and only 5 innings of work. He's given up at least 3 earned runs in 3 of his last 4 starts. Not really pitching deep into ball games either. And the Blue Jays, they've hit right-handed pitchers very well in the last 30 days, so I like their chances here. Give me the Toronto Blue Jays on the money line. In our next game, it's the Colorado Rockies taking on the Boston Red Sox. Austin Gomber and Garrett Whitlock are your starters. Garrett Whitlock hasn't had a lot of innings at home this season at Fenway Park, 11 2/3 innings, but a solid ERA at 3.86, and he's been pretty inconsistent as of late. When you look at his last 5 starts, he had to start against the Angels with only 1 earned run allowed, then 5 earned against the Brewers, 1 earned against the Diamondbacks, 4 earned against the Tampa Bay Rays, and then last start, 6 1/3 innings of 1-run baseball, 10 strikeouts. So he's kind of been on this off and on pace in the last 5 starts, but I think he's good enough here against the Rockies. You look at the Rockies' numbers in the last 30 days against right-handed pitchers, they look really good on paper, especially in the team OPS department, but you also have to take into consideration that the Rockies play at Coors Field. So when you look at those numbers on the road against right-handed pitchers, Colorado not so great against those right-handed pitchers after all. Their team OPS is ranked 21st in baseball, their isolated power is dead last in the league, and their strikeout rate is pretty steep at 24.6% against righties in the last 30 days away from Coors Field. So I think the Rockies struggled here against Whitlock, and I think Austin Gomber, 7.57 ERA, he has struggled mightily this season, both on the road and at home. The Red Sox have hit lefties pretty well in the last 30 days with their top 10 in team OPS against those southpaws. So give me the Boston Red Sox here on the run line. I think they win this game comfortably. Next up, it's the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Texas Rangers. Reed Detmers and Andrew Heaney are your projected starters in this one. So a pair of lefties in this ball game, and 2 teams that did lefties pretty well, especially as of late. But even though the Angels have good numbers, OPS and isolated power-wise against those left-handers, the Rangers have better numbers. And, this is a tough team to beat when the Rangers are playing at Globe Life Field. We saw Reed Detmers face the Rangers earlier in the season back on May 6th. He struggled in that game. Only 4 innings of work. He had 7 base hits and 3 earned runs in a 10-1 Angels loss. Andrew Heaney is a guy that's kind of, volatile. He strikes out a lot of guys, but gives up a good amount of home runs and walks. He has not been the best at Globe Life Field this season, but I think he's good enough here against an Angels team. As of late, even though their numbers are good against lefties, their strikeout rate is pretty steep at 26.4%. So I'm going to take the Texas Rangers here on the money line. I think they're going to back up Andrew Heaney offensively. Next up, we're going to see the Chicago Cubs taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates in an NL Central battle. Another game with a pair of lefties. It's going to be Rich Hill and Drew Smyly on the mound. And this one, right now, the forecast can certainly change, but right now the weather looks like it's going to be beneficial for pitchers in this one at Wrigley Field. We know that the weather is pretty important when you're looking at a Wrigley Field total. And I do think we're going to see a low-scoring game here. Drew Smyly's pitched well at Wrigley Field this season and just in general in 2023. When you look at these two teams offensively against left-handed pitchers, they have not been great in the last 30 days. The Pirates are ranked 17th in OPS. The Cubs are ranked 24th. Both of these teams miserable in the isolated power departments. The Cubs are 27th and the Pirates are 28th. The Cubs strikeout rate 29.6%, the second highest in baseball. So I think we're going to see a low-scoring game. I think both starting pitchers pitch well. Give me the under. Next up, it's the Cincinnati Reds taking on the Kansas City Royals. Ben Lively and Daniel Lynch are your projected starters in this one. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, the Reds have been a pretty profitable team when facing a left-handed starting pitcher. And, you look at Daniel Lynch, he's 0-2 with a 4.41 ERA. I think he's pitched better than that ERA. He's kind of gotten unlucky in the first couple of innings of each of his starts, but I still don't think he's good enough here for the Royals bats to back him up and win this game. I think the Reds take this one. I think they have the advantage in the bullpen. In the beginning of the series, I thought the Royals certainly had the upper hand in the bullpen game because the Reds bullpen was used a lot in that Cardinals series, so they didn't have some of their better relievers available in that first couple of games. But in this one, they should have virtually everybody available out of the pen. And Ben Lively's been good, good enough for Cincinnati. I think in this game against the Royals offense, it just doesn't really do great with runners in scoring position. One of the worst teams in baseball this year with runners in scoring position. And, Ben Lively, I think he gives them 5 decent innings. Should be enough for the Reds bats to back him up against Daniel Lynch, who, like I said, a left-handed pitcher. The Reds have been very good against lefties this season. So give me the Cincinnati Reds on the money line in this one. Next up, it's the Houston Astros taking on the Washington Nationals. Josiah Gray and Framber Valdez are your starters. I don't love this Nationals bullpen, but I do think Josiah Gray pitches well in the first 5 innings of this start. I do have my regression concerns in his game because of the fact that his strikeout numbers are down a little bit this season and the walk rate is going up a little bit as of late. But still, on the road this year, Josiah Gray's been much better. 45 2/3 innings. He's got a higher strikeout rate on the road than he does at home, a lower walk rate, a lower home run rate, and obviously a lower ERA at 2.36 compared to 4.1 at Nationals Park. So I do think Gray pitches well early. Framber Valdez is a lefty, starting to go with some sharp contact. We saw last start 5 innings, 3 runs, 4 walks. It was rare, last year to see Framber Valdez not have a quality start, and we saw that in his last start against those Blue Jays. It was a 3-2 loss for Houston. The Nationals, pretty solid lineup against left-handed pitchers. They limit strikeouts at the plate, where in the last 30 days they're at 18.2% as a team, one of the lowest in baseball. They're 7th in OPS. Their isolated power numbers are right around league average, which we know this is not a very powerful team, but starting to get some power numbers against those left-handed pitchers. I think Washington does enough early in this game to compete, maybe have the lead at the end of the first 5, but I'm just going to take the half a run here with the Nationals, the road underdogs, in the first 5 innings. Next up, it's the Miami Marlins taking on the Seattle Mariners. Yuri Perez and Luis Castillo are your starters. I'm going to take the under in this game. We're at a pitcher-friendly ballpark with 2 really solid options on the mound with sub-3 ERAs and Yuri Perez and Luis Castillo. Castillo's pitched better at T-Mobile Park, which makes sense. As I mentioned, it's a very pitcher-friendly ballpark. He's at a 1.89 ERA with a 4-1 record in 47 2/3 innings at home this season with 61 strikeouts and only 2 home runs allowed. Like I said, Yuri Perez in his first few innings at the major league level, he has impressed a lot of people, including myself. 3-1 record, a 2.17 ERA, good strikeout numbers. He's on the road, a 2.51 ERA. We've seen certain Marlins starters struggle away from Lone Depot, but that hasn't been Perez quite yet. The Mariners' numbers against right-handed pitchers, not the best in the last 30 days. I think we're going to see a low-scoring game here. Give me the under in Miami, Seattle. Next up, it's the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. We're going to see Ranger Suarez and Merrill Kelly on the mound in this one. I know Ranger Suarez has pitched well as of late, and he faced a very tough lineup in his last start against the Los Angeles Dodgers. He went 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts, a quality start win for the Phillies, 5-4 the final score. However, I just can't forget about that start last year from Ranger Suarez at Chase Field against these Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks team at last year is nowhere near as good as this year's team, and Suarez struggled mightily in that game. His defense also struggled behind him. In that start at Arizona, he gave up a good amount of unearned runs, 6 total runs. 2 of those were earned, but he had 2 walks allowed, 5 base hits, so there was a lot of base runners in that game early. It ended up being a blowout loss, 13-7, the final score in favor of Arizona. And I do think when you look at Arizona's numbers in the last 30 days, at the beginning of the season, this wasn't a team hitting lefties too well, but that's changed as of late. They're 7th in isolated power against those lefties. They're 6th in team OPS. Very low strikeout rate at 18.6%. And Merrill Kelly's a good option for them on the mound. He was struggling at Chase Field, but he's put together some decent outings at home as of late to bring that ERA down to 3.56. He went 7 innings, a 2-run ball against the Braves in his last home start in a 3-2 Arizona win, 8 strikeouts in that game. Give me the Arizona Diamondbacks here on the money line. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Oakland Athletics. Tyler Glasnow and Luis Medina are your projected starters. Now, obviously, the Oakland A's have turned things around quite a bit as of late, playing much better baseball than they were at the beginning of the season, but I still don't think this is a very good, very beneficial starting pitching matchup for him, as Luis Medina's got a 7.53 ERA this season, coming off a decent start against the Milwaukee Brewers, but the Tampa Bay Rays, one of the toughest lineups in baseball. Tyler Glasnow is pitching well, a 2.87 ERA. He struggled in his first start, but then back-to-back really good outings. 5 1/3, 6 strikeouts against the Red Sox, 6 innings, 1 run, 6 strikeouts against the Rangers, both wins and run line covers for the Rays. I think he wins this game. I think the Rays cover the run line as well. So give me the Tampa Bay Rays laying those 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Cleveland Guardians taking on the San Diego Padres. Aaron Savale and Michael Wacha are your starters. Michael Wacha, it's crazy to see how well he's pitched as of late in the last month or so, as towards the end of April, he had an ERA above 7, but in the month of May, in 32 innings of work, a .84 ERA. He's pitched well so far in the month of June. Now his season ERA at 3.18, and he's not a strikeout-dependent guy. I mean, he's missed some bats in the month of June so far, but he's really a pitch-to-contact pitcher. And I actually like that against the Guardians, because if Wacha was a starter that needed strikeouts to be successful on the mound, I don't know if I'd love his chances, because the Guardians do such a good job of putting the ball in play and limiting those strikeouts. But Wacha is able to get out of jams. He trusts in his ground ball stuff, and I do think he pitches well in this game. Aaron Savale is a decent option for the Guardians on the other side, a 2.31 ERA in limited work so far this season, but his strikeout numbers aren't the best. I had some concerns with this game in his rehab outings in the minor leagues, and I do think the Padres will be able to get to him for a few runs in this start. I think the Padres have a better bullpen as well, especially with Karinchak now in the minor leagues. So give me the San Diego Padres on the money line. And the final game for Wednesday's card in Major League Baseball, it's the Chicago White Sox taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers with Mike Clevenger and Clayton Kershaw on the mound. We've mentioned the last couple of years and a few times this season that the White Sox hit lefties pretty well, but in the last 30 days, it's just not been the case. This has been a disappointing Chicago White Sox team, and against lefties in the last month, 19th in baseball in team OPS, so below league average. Isolated power, even worse, ranked 21st in the league. Their strikeout rate is up to 25%. Their walk rate is down to 5%, or actually 5.9%, so the 5th lowest in baseball. Kershaw had back-to-back really good outings with 9 strikeouts each in his last 2 games, 7 innings shutout baseball against the Reds, which I mentioned, good team against lefties, and 7 innings, 2 runs against the Yankees. I think Kershaw's good in this game, and I think Clevenger does get hit a little bit in this start. We saw him struggle last year when he was a member of the Padres. He struggled quite a bit against these Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't like his chances in this one. Give me the Los Angeles Dodgers on the run line. And that's it. Those are the games for Wednesday in Major League Baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.